people start to form routines and habits that aren't necessarily great positives for the business, and when you don't address them immediately, they really get settled in, and it totally impacts the business.
You may have hired the right person, but they're in the wrong seat. You know, like you find a quality person who works hard, but they could not be adept to certain tasks, and that just means like you may need to pivot their role. Doesn't mean the quality of the person is bad. It's just they're not in the right seat that keeps them in their sweet spot. Welcome to the Cash Flow Bros podcast, Chris. Welcome.
Appreciate you having me, man.
It's been a long time. I've been trying to get you on for 3-4 years now, and you just keep turning me down.
Right. Yeah.
Before the podcast even existed. No, man. So you are actually part of a mastermind group that we were both a part of.
Yeah.
And we met before that because you bought an investment property from one of my clients.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was funny because who connected us, Blake, who's also in our mastermind group, it was funny because he was like, you got to meet this guy, Chris. He reminds me of you. And just kind of, he was talking about just the determination to invest, the sharpness and all that kind of stuff, which was a compliment, I think, to both of us, you know, because he sits down with a lot of people every year and they say, hey, Blake, how do you get involved with investing? How do you do stuff? And he's told me numerous times that we are kind of some of the only few that have actually taken action steps and followed through on his advice. So, yeah, that's exciting. And so through that journey, you became part of the mastermind, started to get to know you there, and then you started a business, and I was like, we got to have you on the podcast to talk about the business, what you help investors with, and then just a little bit about your journey. So appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, it's been great, man. It's funny because Blake pretty much said, I think he said the same thing to both of us, like, you're going to have to meet this guy. He reminds me of you like 2 years ago, you know? Or no, like you're like him 2 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, it's just it's funny how those things work out, Yeah,
so, it's great.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's start from the beginning. Kind of, you did some service work in the service industry for a little while, and then you kind of merged into management and Grimco and all that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about your background and kind of where you came from and kind of learned your business sense.
Sure, yeah. So I would say that I started in restaurants many years ago, kind of worked my way up through management, fell into what I'm doing now, which is what you were saying, with a company called Remco. We're a commercial contractor company, operate in 9 states. We've got 250 employees now, kind of grew the business, kind of quadrupled the business over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's been a pretty wild ride in terms of managing all of that. But it's, a lot of lessons learned along the way. One of the things that we did is we started to purchase other service companies as well.
Right.
And when we started buying these companies, this owner would be a real estate investor, and then the next company that we would buy, this guy was a real estate investor too, and I'm just thinking, what is going on?
You're like piecing it all together.
Yeah,
you're like, maybe there's something to say.
Okay, something's going on here because these guys keep, whatever, so this keeps showing up. So I called one of the guys, because we'd built a relationship after we had purchased the company, and I just said, tell me about real estate. Like, what's the deal here, And he had used his service company as kind of like a cash engine, so to speak. And so every month he was buying a property. He did that for 20 years, something like that. And so he just started to talk to me a little bit about it, get me interested in it. And he said, have you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad? And I said, no, what is that? Oddly enough, I had the book, but I'd never read it. Somebody had given it to me at some point.
It's like the gateway drug.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I read the book, and I called him back, and we just started having conversations. And, I just started digesting a lot of podcasts, a lot of books. I tried to it's funny how when you're not aware of something, you don't really pay attention to it. Once I became aware of real estate investing, I started to recognize how many people I actually knew that were in the space, in real estate space. So I started having all these conversations with those individuals, and it kind of really led me down the pathways to start the business that we started in 2020. It's weird now today, saying 2023. I feel like we're still in it, but it's not. So
yeah, first of the year. It's the first podcast of the year.
Yeah. Actually, you're the second conversation that I've had in 2024. First one with my wife. So you're the second real person I've seen in 2023. for.
I feel honored.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. So you kind of caught that real estate bug, like you said, got the gateway drug of, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think the great thing about that book is, I think it gives you an overview of how money operates, how the world works, and if you ultimately want your money to make more money, there's a few avenues that you can do it, but there's not, and they're not hard in the sense of like complicated, but they require a lot of hard work, basically is what it comes down to. And so same with me, read that and kind of went on the journey too of like, okay, how do I figure out how to make my finances grow and create financial freedom and stuff. So that's incredible that you went on that journey similar to me. But so I want to break apart a little bit about your management experience, at Remco and different things that you've done there that have kind of informed this next step of yours as far as like, starting, the repair company and different things like that. But you've been doing that for a while. Talk me through some of the key traits of a successful business, because you analyze a lot of different businesses. And so you get to see healthy businesses, I'm sure, that just have a owner who wants to exit. It's been their time. And then I'm sure you take on some businesses who probably have some unhealthy aspects to it. And the owners probably burn out because of those unhealthy aspects. So I want you to just talk me through just a few unhealthy things that you see in businesses that keep coming up, and then a few things that are consistent things that come up in healthy businesses.
Sure. I would say that it's really something that's probably consistent across every business that we've bought or integrated and acquired is when the owner is highly engaged in the business. It's top down, right?
Right.
I mean, but whatever the leader's doing, everybody else is going to follow, essentially.
Right.
So when the owners are engaged in the business, they're paying attention to things from the ground up in terms of how things are operating, what people are focused on, whatever. Those businesses tend to be pretty successful.
Yeah.
It's the ones where, like we bought one, I don't know, 3 months ago, and the guy had his sister was running the business. He he'd pop in every now and then. He wasn't super engaged, like he had worked in the business for a really long time. He'd been around for 25 years. And so probably for the first 15 years, he was highly engaged, but for the last 10, he was just kind of treating it like, somebody else is running it. I'll pop in whenever I want to, whatever. And you start to find a lot of just oddities in those types of businesses. People start to form routines and habits that aren't necessarily great positives for the business. And when you don't address them immediately, they really get settled in, and it totally impacts the business. And sometimes it's not things that you can see just whenever you're doing kind of due diligence processes either, So it's like, it's kind of the cultural, I guess you could use culture as a part of it, but just the way that people think, the philosophy behind how they approach everything starts to change whenever when the owner's not super engaged in the business. So that impacts every aspect of the business too. It's kind of like the taking a cookie from the cookie jar. Well, nobody said anything, maybe I could take another one, take another cookie. Well, still nobody said anything, and that kind of mindset starts to prevail in all different aspects of the business. So
I think what you said was very interesting, because it's not, people are people, and there's going to be bad habits that start to form or poor practices or, maybe some even dishonesty, that happens. And that's just going to happen no matter in any business. But I think what you said was they're so removed from the management process that they don't nip it in the bud and say, hey, let's redirect. This is the standard. This is where we want to be. And so then those potential inconsistencies or poor choices become a habit, become a trait of the business.
Yeah.
And then it ingrains itself in the culture rather than saying like, hey, we messed up here, but let's fix it. Hey, we messed up here, but let's fix it again, and just kind of keep redirecting the ship, because as a manager, that's your role, is to see the issues and redirect the ship.
That's right. Yeah. Nobody's ever going to, as an owner in the business, no one in that business will ever care as much as you do, you know? And so you either have to find somebody that does and then give them some skin in the game, you know, so that they have a reason to be there, or you have to stay fully engaged in the business, you know? And so some people treat it like that. You know, it's almost like when you talk about passive income or passive investing, you know, or there's really no such thing, you know. I mean, there's some level of engagement that you're going to have in it. And whether that's investing in the right people that you surround yourself with and then giving them skin in the game, or just staying invested yourself, you know. But you have to do one of those two things, you know. Otherwise you may not see it happening. It may take a year to kind of unravel, but it's going to unravel at some point, you know.
Yeah. So what would you say is the number one trait you see in businesses that are healthy?
A number one trait in businesses are healthy, I would say that it's the businesses that are really hard. I mean, it's kind of a cliche saying in business, you know, hire hard, manage easy, you know, spend more time finding the right people. Those are the ones that are more successful. You know, they either accidentally found the right person who was very passionate about whatever it was that they were doing, or they worked really hard to find that individual. But those are the people that really kind of make a successful business.
And I'm assuming too, it's like you may have hired the right person, but they're in the wrong seat. You know, like you find a quality person who works hard, but they could not be adept to certain tasks. And that just means like you may need to pivot their role. Doesn't mean the quality of the person is bad. It's just they're not in the right seat that keeps them in their sweet spot of skill sets, you know.
Yeah.
And passion, you know.
And what you just said comes down to the leadership too. So whether that's the owner or the person that's running the business, you got to have a vision for. I think that people would be surprised at how much time I spend thinking about them. Right. You know, I've actually had to tell some of my managers that, like, you guys are pretty much all I think about, you know, like what you need, what we need to be focused on from a development standpoint, what you're going to need, you know, next month, next year, you know, where do I see you 3 years from now? Do you see yourself there? You know, so when you're not spending that amount of time thinking about the people that are helping you accomplish everything that's being accomplished, then you're thinking about the wrong things. You know, you should be thinking about your people and your customers, and that's about it, you know?
And I think it starts with a service first mentality of putting others before you, and ultimately that will pay you back in dividends. But I know that even when I think about tenants and how I'm working with them and processing, like I think about, you know, if I can benefit them, then they will ultimately, it's going to pay back to me as well.
Yeah.
So
they're going to stick around.
They're going to stick around. They're going to be happier. They're going to pay on time, you know? And so does that mean I bend the rules so much that they take advantage of my business? No. But it's also like, how can we create win-win situations instead of being so legalistic to the law that, you know, they're unhappy and ultimately it's not a win-win situation, you know? So one investor I learned from a while ago, you know, he would go in if someone was like, hey, we want to move, he would be like, well, let's have a conversation. Why? You know, and they could be like, oh, the bathroom's just, you know, kind of messed up now. And he's like, well, shoot, I'll go in and put a new bathroom in for you. You know, if these things need to be fixed, and he would go do it, and they're happy as can be, and they stay. And, you know, we all know tenant turns can cost a lot of money. So for him to do a $2,000 or $3,000 bathroom renovation is a lot better than renovating the whole house when the tenant turns, plus finding a tenant, plus the lost income. And so it's smart to have these conversations and say, how can we create a win-win situation with these, you know, with the people you're serving?
He was taking a long-term mindset on it too, though. You know, I think that's where a lot of people lose, is because they're thinking about the short-term gains and you know, like the short-term loss of having to spend that money, you know. But I want a tenant for forever that's a good tenant, you know. Like, I'm losing a tenant right now that I'm devastated over because he, you know, we'd had a conversation. His lease comes up in February. He was going to sign for another year. I was excited because I wasn't going to have to. He's been great, you know. He's like a watchdog in the neighborhood because I've got another property that's next door too. But he's moving to be closer to his father, whatever. And so, but yeah, we want, I mean, they're customers. Those are our customers, you know, as real estate investors, you know, and we have to think we have to think about that, you know, and customers really care about two things. Can I trust you, and can you solve my problem, you know? And so, you know, you establish the trust early on, but then we have to solve their problems along the way too, and kind of think ahead of some of those things for them, because I don't like looking for tenants. I don't know about you, but it is a pain in the butt. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would say looking for tenants is the hardest part of the process. Yeah. Similar to finding a good employee.
Yeah.
Finding a good tenant who's willing to take care of the property and pay on time. And then you, in turn, get out there for repairs quickly, and you take care of the property yourself. You know, I think
hire hard, manage easy, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like search tenant hard, manage lease easy. I don't know how that works out.
But yeah, the tenant process is definitely the hardest part. But every time that I go back on some of my principles of like, when I have those check boxes that don't get checked of like, this is marginal, and I bend on it, it ends up not going as well, unfortunately. So through the years, I've kind of learned on a few things that are kind of non-negotiables. So what you have rented to a few people, do you have some of those non-negotiables that as you're vetting tenants and thinking through it, are you still learning that process? Like
learning, because, you know, while I have interviewed God knows how many people just in the business world, you know, I've brought a lot of that skill set with me as you know, because you can call BS on certain things pretty quickly, you know, but I'm still learning, you know. I mean, because you get into, you know, you have the basic lease agreement that you start out with, and then you try and learn as many lessons as you can from other people, whether it's a podcast or a book or whatever, you know, people that you know that are saying, you better make sure you add that, you don't need that, whatever, you know. And then you get your own tenants, and then you have your own problems, and then you start to learn things that you do and don't want, you know. So I've been pretty fortunate with the tenants that I've had so far. It's like I'm waiting for that bad one to come, because he's going to, you know, or she's going to, but still a lot of lessons to be learned, you know. It's
an ever evolving process. And I think what's also interesting is, you know, at the end of the day, you're right. You're going to have several good ones, and then you're going to have a bad one. That's just kind of the nature of things. But in general, you are solving someone else's problem, you know, like, and I'm not saying there's not hurdles or reason why people ultimately need to rent in different situations, but they have a problem that they, at the moment, don't want to have long-term residents and own the property. And so you're solving a problem for them. And so ultimately you have to approach it from that standpoint. Like you said, do they trust you, and can you solve their problem? And if you can do those two things, then they're probably happy. So talk me through, you've got a few properties now under your belt, which is really exciting. I think the first one's always the hardest one, and then it just kind of grows from there. What are your future plans for investing?
Well, I would say that, you know, we in addition to kind of starting the real estate investment journey, also started a business this year, or in 2023. So weird. But it's a renovation company. It's part renovation company, part real estate investment company. So I think a lot of our focus has been in trying to build up the kind of our resources and our competencies this year. You know, we work a lot in single family homes and in apartment turnover right now. So we are trying to build up to get into the multifamily and commercial space. That's ultimately where we want to end up, but we're spending a lot of our time right now in the single family home space. You know, we're doing flips. We haven't done any buy and hold investments yet with this new company, but that's kind of been a lot of my time has been going into that. And I kind of shifted away a little bit from real estate investing while I was building this kind of piece of it up, you know?
Yeah. You actually helped a client of mine out. So we had a property that, you know, tenant had moved out, needed, you know, not like a full flip, but needed a decent amount, 10K plus worth of work to kind of get it up to snuff to bring it to market. And you guys went through and did an incredible job getting floors done and cabinets and, you know, painting all the things and renovating and stuff. So that was a huge win that you guys got that business. He had like nothing but great things to say about dealing with you guys, which is awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I mean, that's what that's our goal, is for people to walk away and be able to not have anything but great things to say, you know?
So you started that business, you're kind of starting to ramp it up and scale it, working with some property managers in town, and then also obviously trying to eventually, the bigger goal is to start acquiring some of your own stuff in that portal and start to backlog some rentals with that company, which is awesome. So I guess in that space you'll use your contracting connections to renovate the properties and get them ready for rent, or is that the plan? They coincide?
Yeah. So the idea behind the property management relationships is that, they're managing, between all of the PM relationships that we have, they're managing thousands of single family homes in the Birmingham metro area. And it's kind of a pipeline for us on one aspect, because there's portfolios that are within those that they manage that that investor's going to end up selling.
Right.
We've already seen them turn some portfolios over in the time that we've been doing work for them. So it's having inside access to some of those portfolios for purchase whenever we're ready. It's also kind of going through the trials ourselves as a new company and knowing some of the things that we need to understand about that world, so to speak. And then, but we're adding, we do residential renovation work as well. We are working with some wholesalers to do some flips as well too. So right now it's really kind of like building all of the skill sets that we need and the systems and processes that we want to have in place so that we can go a lot bigger, a lot faster, So I would say that we're staying tight on purpose in terms of not moving too quickly to grow. Even I say that we've doubled our revenue in the last 2 months, So even though I say that, we have
you're growing.
Yeah, we are growing, But we're trying to stay really focused on our processes and systems, so that we have a really strong rhythm to the way that we move, so that when we're ready to take bigger steps, that we can start taking some of those bigger steps.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's some of your all's philosophy? Because there's the triangle of like, you can't have all three, right? Like quick turnaround, you can't have it cheap, and you can't have it quality.
Right.
You've got to pick two, So where do you feel like, in a perfect world, you guys would be all three, but where do you lean towards as far as, your objectives and your company ethos, that kind of is the guiding light? Like what two are you going to bring and to the maximum,
I would push back on that a little bit by saying that that's really up to the customer and what they want. Like we can deliver. I forget how it goes. It's like you can have good and you can't have good and fast, or you can have fast and cheap, or
yeah. You can have fast and good, but it's going to cost you a lot of money.
That's right. Yeah.
Or you can be cheap and good, but it's going to take a long time.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
And the flip side is it can be expensive, or it can be cheap, and it can be fast, but the quality is going to suffer.
Yeah. So our estimate process, when we're going through the renovations or doing the surveys, anyways, we follow like a good, better, best model. So we actually give our clients the opportunity to make the decision about what they want.
Right.
So we show them what, and we don't call it cheap, but if you want it fast and you want it done inexpensively, this is what that looks like.
Yeah.
If you want a different level of quality and you want us to spend a little bit more time on these areas, this is what that cost looks like. And then, we're not going high end by any means. We're not doing any, we're not at that level, with some of the subs and contractors and then our employees as well.
Right.
So I would say that we probably we could do most residential work, but we're not going into mansions and doing bathroom remodels or anything like that, so.
Yeah, you need a master tile guy.
That's right. Yeah,
that's a whole nother level of. The tile was imported from
Italy. Yeah,
Italy.
It's the Italian white marble. Yeah.
Need to be handled with care.
Yeah. Why does he have rose oil that he's dripping over each one of these tiles individually?
It's blessed.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's been cool to see your growth. Like I said, it's been great to have you as a resource to send our clients to. A lot of people we work with are just looking for a good quality, person who's going to renovate and ultimately like bring, like do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, the trust being built. And I think that's going to continue to grow in this next year. What are your plans, I guess, for 2024? Like, do you have, like, is there a revenue key mark you're trying to hit, or is it more of just, hey, we're trying to hit these projected like personnel things, and the money will come as, you know, as we bring up the quality and bring up the connections and networking? Like, how do you approach such an early business in a new year? Because you don't have a ton of metrics. You just started, so you don't have year-over-year metrics to say, hey, if our revenue, you know, does this, we're going to be at this point, you know. So
it's so funny that you say that, because we had a meeting with the partners last night just to kind of like, you know, I just wanted to talk about how cool 2023 was, and you know, excited to kind of get into 2024. But you're right. I mean, typically what I'm used to being able to do is say, you know, in a business that we've had 30 years worth of metrics, you know, we can go back and take a look at what we do on average, you know. And, you know, we say this is what we think on average we'll do 10% more every single year. And so you add 10% to whatever that revenue is, and you know what your revenue per employee is. And so you take the top line number and divide it by revenue per employee, and that's how many people that you need to generate that revenue. And then you start hiring, and then, you know what I mean? Yeah. So to your point, it is tough. And so you really just look at income and expense 100%. And knowing that we're going to incur this new expense, and what is that going to do to our margins? You know, how much revenue do we need to be able to cover this expense? And, you know, do we need to make pricing adjustments or whatever? So we really just settled in on kind of a average weekly revenue goal that we're trying to hit, and that should cover our goals, you know, in terms of what we want to accomplish. But most of that is also surrounding making sure we get the right people in place too. So, you know, we have several more employees that we want to hire in 2024 to be able to accomplish things. There's you know, the big thing that I've talked about, and I just said this last night to these guys, is the processes and systems that we have to get put in place now. If we don't get practiced and build those into our routines, you can't, because we're going to 4X what we're doing now in 2024. So, you know, 4 times more than what we're doing today. It will be, and so I told them I want you to think about every process, everything that you do every single day, and doing 4 times more than that, you know? So like, how do we have to restructure our mindset or our plan or our system or the people that we're using to be able to make that happen? And so while we do have revenue goals and margin goals, it's really about the systems and processes to 4X, you know, 2024, what we did in 2023.
Right. So, yeah, that's awesome. And it also ties in 4X for 2024. You know, it's a beautiful.
Well, Grant Cardone's got the 10X, so you know,
yeah, in
we're going to 11X it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you find, so when I was working in a different industry, I would find when we would hire someone new, output didn't 2X. So the output would grow about 50%. And then the quality would go up 50%. And these are rough margins, but you know, with Remco and different things, have you noticed that it's kind of this? It's not necessarily like 100% more output.
There's a ramp up period for sure. You know, so like it depends on the position, depends on the role within the company as to how quickly, you know, but we always call it a runway, you know, like you have to give them enough runway to be able to take off and fly, you know, and some runways for some roles are months long, you know. There's a lot of training and development that goes into that. And because everybody comes into any business with a certain mindset of how they're used to doing things. And, you know, I would say that any successful business has got a pretty stringent way of certain processes anyhow, you know, and it takes a lot to learn all those things. There's a lot of circumstance that you have to go through, a lot of situations that you have to go through to learn that, oh, we don't do it that way, we do it this way.
The nuances,
yeah. There is nuances. There's a ton. So
yeah, I'm working through, so I'm changing some of the admin who helps me with the real estate side of things, and we're working through some of that. And it's funny, I describe it as like I'm trying to teach like 115-minute sprints, because a lot of that admin role is like, hey, do this thing real quick, and it's done in 15 minutes, but it may take you 30 minutes to teach them how to do it and teach, you know, talk about it, the nuances of it, how it's to be done. So the onboarding process is just very time consuming, and we're still in the middle of it. And so, you know, I initially had unrealistic expectations that role would be trained faster. And then just through the process, I'm like, this person's doing great, but it's just going to take longer. Like you said, that runway is
it takes twice as long, dude. I mean, when you have anybody that's new, you're spending twice the amount of time in the beginning than you will long term. But we hit a point, and I just learned this because, I mean, I had to force myself through it, I guess. But we hit a point in the commercial business where we had essentially tripled the size of the company. And we were adding in some middle management layers, and we were just doing some things. And I wore a lot of hats in that company. And so I could not physically handle all of my responsibilities anymore. And I ended up developing 4 people that took over different areas. But for a year, it was just, I mean, like, it was hell for a year, you know, because I was spending so much time with each one of them, answering so many questions and trying to, you know, challenge their way of thinking, whatever. I remember one of them came into my office one day, and she was in and out of my office probably, you know, 15 times a day, you know, just different conversations, different questions, whatever, making sure she was doing the right thing. And I had other people that were doing that exact same thing. So, I mean, all day I was on the phone or talking to somebody. And she was in my office one day, and it happened like while she was sitting there, this guy called me, then this guy called me, and they were asking me all these questions, whatever.
You're like, conference call, let's just get this done with.
That's right, yeah. So she said, because she knew how much time she was taking away from me to learn more and ask questions. And she said, how many other people are doing what I do, like taking your time like this? And I said, there's probably about 3 or 4 or 5 of you, you know. And she said, how do you do it all? I said, I just do it, you know. But I didn't know then what I know now, but I was spending a ton of time developing them. And while it took me twice as long to do everything during that, maybe 3 times as long to do everything during that time frame, my freedoms now in my time are exponential, you know, because I know that they know how to see this problem. I know that they know how to solve through this, you know. And I will tell you, the biggest challenge for me was, and it's kind of like having kids too, to an extent. They're not going to do it the way that you did it. You know, sometimes they have to have the experience of failing or the experience of making the decision or feeling the weight of that decision, you know, and they may not just solve it the way that you would solve it, may not be as fast as the way that you would do it. But as long as it gets done the right way, that's all that really matters, you know. And
if you take that away, you could also, you know, miss out on some potential amazing opportunities of different ways things could be solved if you just micromanaged everything.
100%, you know. And when you start teaching them a way of seeing the business and thinking rather than just showing them all these little tasks, they start bringing you things that are happening in the business or ideas that you didn't see it, or you didn't have that idea or whatever. And it just makes the business better. But it is a ton of work. It's, you know, so I always challenge people to front load their time with somebody, spend more time with them in the beginning, really, really tightly. And you'll see, my experience has been that it pays off. So,
man, that's so good. And I mean, even the place that I'm at, you know, in that process, this is like helpful information for me. It's like, I haven't nearly the management experience that you do. And so to think it through and be like, okay, this is just normal part of the process, and to re-engage and stay with it. And ultimately, like, know that if you shortchange it, you're going to shortchange the long run. You know, like in the immediacy of it, I might feel like, oh, they're up and running and freedom. I have a little bit of freedom, but how much more freedom or how much more opportunities could we have if I sit in this moment of teaching longer? Basically.
Yeah. And find the right person too, because, you know, sometimes you could follow that process of investing and front loading all that time, and it's the wrong person, you know?
Yeah. So then you're back to square one.
That's right. Yeah. And then you're like, shoot. This one. Yeah.
So this is phenomenal. And I think what's great about your repair company is that you're going to bring all of this. I mean, you are bringing, it's not like you haven't already, but bringing all of this management experience to a field that, to be honest, like, you know, there are, I think, a lot of really great, you know, people who do repair and contracting and stuff out there. But I think there are some who do lack the management side of the experience and just ultimately know how houses operate, know about plumbing, all that kind of stuff, passionate about it, excited to see how renovations go, but they lack the management side of things. And so there's like a cap on the service they can provide customers, whether it's in growth of their company or they do grow, but there's poor quality because of the lack of management of systems. And, you know, when they scale, you know, things start to fall apart. So I think what's really exciting about you and your company is that you're bringing all of that level of experience to a field. And I think you guys are you're going to 6X it. You know,
can't get to 10 yet.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't hope for that. Maybe it's a little too much on your plate. But
I appreciate that, man. I mean, we're excited, you know, but we're I would say that it's really about teaching people a way of thinking. You know, like I think that there's always tasks to be done, but when you can teach somebody a way of thinking and seeing things, it totally, like one of the challenges that we've had recently is just with our employees, not our subs, but our employees, is making sure that they're staying on task and like seeing everything that needs to happen on a job. Because what's going to help us grow is this guy can manage this job on his own. This guy can manage this job on his own. We don't have to be on site with these guys, you know, 100% of the time.
Right.
And so one of the things that we're going to start actually this week is we're going to start doing a kind of a kickoff meeting in the morning where we're walking through the entire project and the goals for the day. And there's also obviously management throughout the day, but then at the end of the day, we're going to be asking the employee to walk us through all of your tasks. You walk the group through your tasks today, and what could you have done differently in terms of affecting better quality or being more efficient with your time. And when you force somebody to think about the decisions that they had to make throughout the day, and they know that they're going to have to face those decisions at the end of the day and think through what could I have done better, you know, then it just creates a mindset of, you know, paying more attention, you know, being more engaged with what's happening. So I think that it's about teaching a way of thinking is really what management comes down to, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah.
Well, how do people get a hold of you and reach out if they need a repair done or renovation done?
Yeah. So
all that kind of stuff.
We're terrible at social media so far. And so I would say the best way is just call me, text me, you know. So I'll I guess you can put my phone number.
We'll put an email or something in the show notes and have people reach out to you and you know, be able to get a hold of your company if they need something done, or you can reach out to me and I can connect you and stuff. So, but man, I'm super excited and selfishly I wanted this because like you have just a depth of knowledge when it comes to managing people, growing companies. And so, you know, I'm kind of in the middle of trying to grow my company and trying to expand my team, even on a very, very much smaller scale than 250 people. But selfishly, I was like, this is going to be great because I'm going to gain something from your deep knowledge base on how you help serve people and manage people and help them grow, you know. So I appreciate the time and, you know, excited for this year with your company, and it's just nothing but great things for this year for you.
Cool. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take it easy.